Hey y'all, what's up? My name is Romelis Wilson. I'm grateful for you to be here on my page. This is a new type of video for me and a new sort of content direction for me. Um, I generally don't post long form content or content of me kind of talking for long periods of time. But honestly, today I want to really honestly share about what it's been like being laid off. I've experienced and I've just crossed over my first year mark of being laid off and kind of traversing through this whole journey that I've had to experience this past year. And I haven't really known what to really share about it, what to really talk about it, who to talk about it with, who to talk about it to. So I figured why not just share it with the internet out of all places. So that's why I'm here. I just want to be honest and share kind of my honest thoughts and some of the things that I've learned over this journey and kind of over this past year in a month. And starting off, I ended up being laid off. I worked in tech. Specifically, I worked for a gaming company, Riot Games. And I worked specifically in tech, and I ended up getting laid off in November of 2022 last year. And I obviously was not alone. It was a huge swath of the tech market that was impacted by layoffs. I think that was the beginning of a lot of the layoffs that are still occurring up until this date. And I know tech is still being majorly impacted by that. So I was a part of kind of that first wave. And in a lot of ways, it was kind of unexpected. I knew I'd heard some low grumblings about some transitions, some changes, some possible things kind of coming up. And do we have budget to expand the team next year? So I wasn't fully completely blindsided, but sort of in a lot of ways. It definitely was unexpected. So that threw me into kind of a unexpected survival sort of mode that I wasn't expecting. And I can honestly say the lessons that I've learned over this past year, the things that I've been able to witness about myself, the things I've been able to witness about the market and about my role and my identity in my role have been remarkable, and they've been transformative and really painful and really hard, but also really rewarding and freeing over this past year. So one of the biggest things I'd probably say starting off, one of the biggest things that I did learn over this past year and over this journey has been is to remember and recognize that a job is simply a job. So this is encouragement to anybody else who is going through a current layoff, who's experienced a layoff, who's experienced a sudden change in a season like this, and they're like, literally, okay, what the heck am I about to do? One of the biggest things that I've had to become okay with and I've had to accept over this past year is that my job and my identity are two separate things. I think I've been conditioned as a male in Western society, and especially somebody who's been reared in capitalism and has been told that the world exists in a certain way, that there was a specific path for me to follow and that this path looked a very specific way. And anything outside of that felt wrong or off, or you were ostracized or you weren't following the normal format. And being laid off was something that I couldn't control. It was something that was completely out of my control and unexpected. And for somebody like me who's a Virgo and an INFJ, I don't like to be out of control, at least over this type of, or these sort of things. But that was one of the biggest things that I've learned and recognized and realized that a job is simply just a job, that it actually didn't define who I was. It didn't determine my worth and my value. Though I was making six figures, in a lot of ways, I viewed myself as more valuable, or as if I had some more acclaim because me being a black man with no degree who had worked his way up to this point, I took a certain level of pride and I had formed a certain level of the job and the role and what I was doing, formed it into parts of my identity, and I didn't realize that. And don't get me wrong, it's normal. A lot of us do roles that we actually love, or we take on careers that we actually really enjoy, but the majority of us don't. The majority of us get coerced into a career at 18 or 19 years old, or into a trajectory for school. And there's been so many people who I know who 10, 12, 15 years later are like, I hate my career. I hate the path that I chose. And I'm going to go back to school to choose something different, or I'm going to choose a different path, or I'm going to go to trade school. I'm going to start life coaching. So I think this period has really taught me that, again, a job is simply a job. It's not your identity. It's not who you are. And I've had to untether myself from the idea that me losing my job, me getting laid off, and me and my other teammates who also were laid off, that it somehow reflected something about us, that it said something about our worth or our value. And I specifically worked in DEI, so diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that has been a field that has been majorly impacted over this past probably year and a half, probably maybe 2 years, with layoffs, especially within the tech sector, and especially within, as a lot of companies have transitioned away from the whole George Floyd event that sparked a lot of these ERGs and DEI groups, and a lot of that sort of work and sort of things kind of transforming workplaces. So one of the other things that I'll probably say that I definitely have learned is to remember and to always ensure that you have other skills and capabilities, and to ensure that you have other things in your back pocket. I had a manager who used to always tell me, she would always tell me, I want to make sure you have things in your bag to take for your next role. And I used to always kind of think that was kind of funny, but I'm like, okay, whatever. And I'll kind of blow it off, but I now understand what she meant, because I'm realizing that, when I was suddenly laid off, I was thrown into a survival mode immediately. Like, holy crap, what am I going to do? How do I figure this out? And I would say the one benefit was I was looking for a home right before being laid off. So I had saved up a portion of money that I had set aside for a down payment on a home. So that did kind of give me a little levity, or a little bit breathing room for the first few months to kind of figure things out. But once I kind of got out of this really shocked state of what happened, and me suddenly, being laid off and going through this whole transition, and I had, personally taking a risk by transitioning from a program project manager into DEI specifically. And then 6 months later, I ended up being laid off. So it was very, very terrifying. But luckily I was able to realize and recognize a lot of the other skills and the things that I was able to kind of gather and put in my bag over my time, over my career, and over the past few years, especially over my time that I'd worked in tech. So I've worked with, individuals, organizations like YouTube, marketing agencies, a few other places. Was worked on a project that was pretty instrumental with the launch of YouTube Shorts and studying the analytics of that. So I worked on some pretty great things, and I was able to remember, holy crap, I can actually glean from all of those things and all of those skills and all those things. Because again, when you first experience a layoff, my mind went to, okay, I'm not good enough. There's something wrong. My work wasn't this. It wasn't that. It was none of those factors. Simply, it was budget. They didn't have the budget, or maybe that's what they told me for corporate speak. Who knows? But I do know what I was doing. I do know what I was producing, and I do know what I was capable of, and I do know how I worked my way up into that place. But what I was able to really kind of be able to realize and recognize was what I actually had in my storage, what I was able to produce. Once I separated my mindset from me being laid off because there was a deficiency about me, I was able to tap in and connect to the areas that actually did serve me, and the areas that I did have skills and capabilities in. And within probably the first month, I am launching my own business, Elephant Stories Consulting. And I pretty much used all of the skills that I had from all of my previous roles, whether it was being a teacher, whether it was working as a project and a program manager, whether it was working in, third party follow up, whether it was being an administrative associate for one of my roles. Like, I've worked for universities, I've guest lectured at a college, I've done so many different things. When I thought about that, I realized, actually, let me go the consultant route. Now, one thing I will say, and a caveat that I will say, if you are somebody who's considering going the consultant route, because it kind of is like not a jack of all trades, you specialize in certain areas. Like me, I specifically specialize in DEI, HR focus, people, human resources, and that type of thing. But again, consulting could be a little bit more of a broader realm, in a broader area, and it has been a very broad realm for me. And in a lot of ways, it's helped me, and it's given me a lot of different, various, diverse projects that I've been able to work on over the past year, and given me a more diverse portfolio for my business. But what it did do, which I did not realize, was it put me in a category of almost like a generalist. And in today's current economy, and in the current market, in the job market, they're still looking for very specialized individuals who are specialized in very specific sectors. Like, they want a digital project manager in this. They want a digital media specialist or whatever the role may be. They want something more specific. And I found out that since switching my title to consultant and still being on the job search has actually harmed me in some ways. Being an entrepreneur has harmed me in some ways. I found out on my job search that there has been some grumblings among recruiters that people who go out and start their own business or launch, their business or entrepreneurs are usually seen as less manageable or less desirable within the workforce because they will be less compliant. And the craziest part was when I did it, I viewed it as, okay, one, I'm doing it out of survival because I have to do what I have to do. And then two, I'm doing it out of one, I also got to pay my bills. Three, I enjoy the work that I am able to produce and the skills and the capabilities that I already have. So I can do this. And I had no clue that that would actually in turn actually hinder my job search and my journey. And because I did not realize. And then another caveat that I do want to add in is also let's talk about the unspoken rules on LinkedIn. I don't believe that many people really talk about this, and I'm going to talk about it even as I'm still looking for a role. So I know it's a risk, but it's very exhausting and stressful to feel like you're almost like walking on eggshells on a platform like LinkedIn, where you're expected to share personal things, share accomplishments, and share things that you're doing and things that you're working on and who you're working with. But what happens when you go through these periods of being laid off and you go through these periods of loss and grieving, and how do people hold space for that? And how is that viewed within these professional corporate environments that don't really allow you to be a human being? So I think that's one of the most frustrating pieces of navigating this job search is not always being able to really be clear, open, and honest about what you feel, knowing that your social media platforms are monitored by these organizations whenever they are looking and to hire and looking to fill these roles. And it just, again, has felt like a very like hand tying thing, but I've been able to, again, luckily generate income through my own business. Started my LLC over this past year. I launched my business in November of 22 last year when I was laid off, surprisingly, and was able to secure a client within that first month. And luckily, it was through a mutual friend that I was able to know. And that's another thing with this job search that I've also been able to recognize that the only way it seems possible to really get interviews is either unless you know somebody personally, or you have a indirect or a some sort of connection in. So that's been a very surprising part of the journey that's definitely shifted over the past few years within the current market. So, and I guess I would probably say the last and final thing I would probably say, if you are going through a layoff or experiencing a layoff, or what I've learned on my own journey of being laid off, is to be 10 steps ahead. Sometimes life does not always allow that. Sometimes you'll be so depressed that you won't want to get out of bed on certain days. And I'm talking from literal experience. There's going to be times when you'll think, okay, I'll get a job. Like, again, when I got laid off, I figured, okay, it'll take a month or two, November, maybe come January, we'll get back going, February, it'll be great. I never imagined that it would be a year and a month later that I would still be kind of going through this journey and this process, but it's taught me so much more about myself. And the biggest thing it's taught me was to be prepared. Luckily, I'd been saving that money for a down payment for a home, but this gives me even more of a ethos in the future to ensure that I'm always financially prepared, because I've found out that no matter how much loyalty and commitment you have to these companies and to these organizations, their loyalty and commitment to you is limited. It's based off a bottom line. It's based off of business. It's nothing personal. It's simply business. Sometimes it is personal. And I found that out as well, navigating a lot of these corporate spaces. But most of it's not. Most of it's just simply business. And it doesn't matter what type of loyalty you've given or how long you've been there, or how long you've been committed to this space. If the seasons change and if the tide changes, you must be prepared. And I realize in today's ever changing economy, as I've been studying a lot of the AI over this past year and just, filling my brain with a lot more knowledge and things that I was not able to do when I was working full time, things are constantly evolving. And I think one thing I've been able to really find within myself in this journey of being laid off over this past year has been, I've been able to actually find me at a much deeper level. I realized when you're caught in this rat, when you're lost in this rat race, and you're constantly, again, just you do this, you reach this benchmark, you go to college, you get the family, you start doing this, and then you do that, and then you get the house, and then I realized that that's a very arbitrary and a very limited to a very specific sector and a certain group of human beings. That's not for everybody. The American dream is not something that is applicable to all individuals to an extent they say it is, but I'm realizing how difficult it actually really is. And I think a lot of millennials and a lot of generations below from Gen Z, a lot of us, Gen X, a lot of us are recognizing and realizing that the rules didn't, what they told us to follow and the path they told us to follow didn't exactly give us the outcome that we were told it would, or the outcome that our predecessors got. And specifically for me as a Black individual in America, that's another conversation. So anyway, all I can say is these have been a lot of the things that I've been able to learn over this journey. So I'm just sharing this as a personal way of one, just coping with this process and how difficult it's been, but also marking and benchmarking this milestone of how far I've come and how resilient so many of us are in our own journey. And that layoffs are, I think they're there to teach you a lot more about you than it is about anything else. This layoff has taught me about my resilience, about what I was capable of, about what I actually had within my storehouse. It shattered a lot of the imposter syndrome that I was struggling with before in a lot of different ways. It's exposed some more of the areas that I still need work in, that I'm still figuring out. But it's shown me what I'm capable of. It's shown me that when my unemployment ran out and I was still able to make ends meet and I still was able to use the skills that I was able to gain, it showed me that no matter what's thrown at you, you can figure it out and you can make it through. So whoever is on their own journey of being laid off, who's ever experiencing financial loss, who's ever experiencing, like, and I'm talking about, I get it. I'm talking about living month to month rent over the past few months, selling stocks. I'm talking about selling selling personal items. Been there, done that, door dashing, doing online surveys, doing remote tasks, doing all of these other little different ways and doing odds and end projects just to make income. Been there, and I've done that over the past year. So my encouragement to you, and my purpose of even sharing this video and sharing more videos like this, is to encourage people on their journey as they are navigating the job market, as they are navigating being laid off, as they are looking to figure out what can they do to make ends meet, what can they do to just even figure this out and have any sort of encouragement on their journey. So since then, I've transitioned into life coaching. I've also launched a podcast, the Elephant Stories Podcast, which will be launching in January of 2024. So keep an eye out for that, where I'll be sharing more information around my own journey, what I've learned, and more tips and just information on how to navigate your own journey and your own process. So I hope this video is an encouragement to somebody. I hope my story and my personal, what I was able to share today, is of some sort of benefit to whoever hears this video, whether it's 2 people, whether it's 100, whether it's 1,000,000, whether it's 1. I hope that this resonates with somebody on their own journey to not give up. You have every reason to give up. You have every opportunity to say, I can't do this. Life makes it completely difficult. People don't understand. And unless somebody else has been laid off or has gone through an experience or lost a lot of what they had, or have went through such a heavy loss like this, a lot of people around you won't always understand. They won't be able to empathize. They won't be able to know what it's like to have to, ask for help in ways that you are not used to asking for help. But one thing I can say is, whatever you do, choose you, even if that means humbling yourself to ask for help, even if that means reaching out to your community, even if that means doing odd and in jobs that you normally wouldn't do, because I've learned that even from those things, there's something I'm learning. And I've learned that in everything, there is a lesson, and there's something to be gleaned from that lesson. And I've learned that that's the more valuable part, more than anything else. Do I miss my 6 figures? Yeah. Do I miss, some of those elements of feeling a sense of normalcy? No. I think what I more so value and appreciate now is being able to embrace something new, put content out like this, putting myself out there a little bit more and trying new things and seeing where my career and where my organization and where my company and where my own life coaching business and the things that I'm doing now can take me. So hopefully I can encourage other people to find their light and to choose themselves. And choosing yourself is hard as hell, but it's necessary and it's really important. So anyway, that's all I got for y'all today. Hopefully this video resonates with you. Again, my name is Romellis Wilson. You can find me on TikTok under RomelWill89. You can find me on Instagram under Romellis Wilson, and the same thing for my podcast, Elephant Stories Podcast. Same thing on TikTok, same thing on Instagram. So hopefully we can connect more. And if you haven't gotten a chance, feel free to subscribe to the channel if this was beneficial to you. But thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And I hope that this is encouragement to you to keep going on your journey as you are figuring out, learning how to choose you. So until next time, alrighty, y'all.